In this video, we're diving into one of the most powerful ideas in economics, demand and supply. You'll learn what really drives prices up or down, and how businesses and consumers shape the market every single day. If you don't fully understand demand and supply, the rest of economics will feel confusing and overwhelming. But if you master it, I promise, every other topic in economics will suddenly make sense. Let's get started. All right, let's start with some basics that are at the heart of microeconomics: demand and supply. First, demand. Demand means the quantity of a good or service that consumers are both willing and able to buy at different prices during a given period of time. Now here's the key rule, the law of demand. When the price of something falls, people usually want more of it. When the price rises, people want less. This works under the classic assumption of ceteris paribus, which means all other things being equal. Let's make it concrete. Imagine Starbucks coffee. If the price drops from $5 down to $3, more people are going to grab a coffee. But if the price shoots up, fewer people will buy. That's demand in action. Now let's flip to the other side, supply. Supply is the quantity of a good or service that producers are willing and able to sell at different prices during a given time. And here's the law of supply. When the price rises, producers are more willing to supply. When the price falls, they supply less. Back to our coffee example. If the price of coffee beans rises, farmers have a strong incentive to grow more beans, because selling them is now more profitable. But if the price falls, they may cut back production. So demand reflects what buyers want, and supply reflects what sellers are willing to provide. And together, they form the foundation for almost everything else we'll cover in economics. Now let's talk about one of the most important ideas in economics, the market and equilibrium. A market is simply the place where buyers and sellers come together. It doesn't always have to be a physical place like a store or a farmer's market. It can also be online, like Amazon or even a stock exchange. The key idea is, wherever people are buying and selling, that's a market. Inside every market, there's a constant push and pull between supply and demand. Buyers want lower prices, sellers want higher prices. But eventually, they meet at a point where both sides agree. That point is called the equilibrium price and quantity. We usually label them as P star for the equilibrium price and Q star for the equilibrium quantity. This is where the demand curve and supply curve cross. So what does equilibrium mean? It's the sweet spot. No surplus, no shortage. The market clears perfectly. Buyers can get the product at a fair price, and sellers can sell exactly the amount they planned. Let's make it real with an example. Imagine a popular concert. The tickets are set at $100 each. At that price, the number of tickets fans want to buy matches exactly the number of tickets available. Result? Every ticket gets sold, nobody's left disappointed, and the venue is full. That's equilibrium in action. But if the price is too high, say $300 a ticket, what happens? Fewer people are willing to buy. Suddenly, you have rows of empty seats. That's a surplus. Too many tickets, not enough buyers. On the other hand, if tickets are priced too low, maybe $20, they'll sell out instantly. Fans will be lined up outside wishing they got in, but the tickets are gone. That's a shortage. Way too much demand, not enough supply. And this is why equilibrium is so powerful. It's not about what buyers want or what sellers want individually. It's about the balance that naturally forms when they meet in the market. So whenever you hear the term market equilibrium, think of it as the balancing point where everything runs smoothly. No waste, no missed opportunities, just the right price and the right quantity. Now let's talk about one of the most important distinctions in economics, the difference between a movement along a curve and a shift of the entire curve. Think of the demand and supply graphs. If the only thing that changes is the price of the good itself, we don't redraw the whole curve. Instead, we just move along the curve. For example, if the price of coffee drops from $5 to $4, people simply buy more coffee. That's a movement along the demand curve. But when something other than price changes, like people's tastes, incomes, or technology, the entire curve shifts left or right. That's a shift. So always remember, price change arrow movement along the curve. Non-price factors, shift of the curve. Now let's break down the major demand shifters using an easy memory trick. T, I, B, E. T is for tastes and preferences. If suddenly everyone gets obsessed with iced lattes on TikTok, demand for coffee skyrockets. R is for related goods. If the price of tea, a substitute, rises, people switch to coffee. Demand for coffee goes up. On the other hand, if milk, a complement, becomes expensive, fewer people want coffee because it costs more to make it the way they like. I is for income. When people earn more, they often buy more normal goods, like coffee shop drinks. But for inferior goods, like instant noodles, higher income might actually reduce demand. B is for buyers. If a city's population doubles, the number of buyers grows, so demand increases. E is for expectations. If customers believe coffee prices will rise next week, they'll stock up now, shifting demand higher today. Now let's flip to the supply side. Suppliers also have their own set of shifters, and we can remember them with ROTTEN. R is for resource costs. If the cost of coffee beans rises, it becomes more expensive to produce coffee, so supply shifts left. O is for other goods prices. If farmers can earn more growing cocoa instead of coffee, they'll switch crops, reducing coffee supply. T is for technology. New espresso machines that save time or energy can increase supply by making production more efficient. T is also for taxes and subsidies. Higher taxes reduce supply, while subsidies encourage more production. E is for expectations. If coffee growers expect higher prices in the future, they may hold back supply now, waiting to sell later. N is for number of sellers. If more coffee shops open, supply increases. If some shut down, supply decreases. Let's look at a couple of real-world examples. During the pandemic, supply chains broke down, shipping costs spiked, and supplies of many goods shifted left. That shortage drove prices up. On the flip side, when new farming technology improves crop yields, supply shifts right. Suddenly, food becomes cheaper and more widely available. So here's the bottom line. Movements happen when price changes. Shifts happen when outside factors change. And once you master tribe and rotten, you'll instantly recognize what's driving those shifts in demand and supply. All right, let's talk about what happens when markets don't sit at equilibrium. First up is a surplus. A surplus happens when supply is greater than demand at a certain price. In other words, businesses produce more than consumers are willing to buy. Think about a clothing store that ordered way too many jackets for the winter. If customers aren't buying them, the store ends up with extra stock. What usually happens? Prices drop. There's downward pressure on price because sellers want to clear out the excess supply. On the flip side, we have a shortage. A shortage occurs when demand is greater than supply at a certain price. Picture a hot new video game console released before the holidays. Everyone wants one, but stores can't keep up with demand. The result? Shelves are empty. People are waiting in line, and prices tend to rise. That's upward pressure on price. Now, sometimes the government steps in and tries to control prices. This is where price ceilings and price floors come in. A price ceiling is the maximum price allowed, set below the equilibrium. A common example is rent control in big cities. Landlords can't charge above a certain amount for apartments, which helps renters in the short term. But here's the catch. Because the price is held artificially low, more people want apartments while fewer landlords are willing to rent them. The result? A housing shortage. On the other hand, a price floor is the minimum price set above the equilibrium. The classic example is the minimum wage. By law, employers can't pay less than a certain amount per hour. This helps protect workers, but if the floor is set too high, businesses might not be able to afford as many employees. That creates a surplus of labor. In other words, unemployment. So, Here's the big picture. Surplus pushes prices down. Shortage pushes prices up. Price ceilings can create shortages. Price floors can create surpluses. It all comes back to the balance between supply and demand, and what happens when that balance is disrupted. Now let's talk about elasticity, which is just a fancy way of saying how responsive people are to changes in price. First, elastic demand. This means that when prices go up, demand drops a lot. Think of luxuries like movie tickets or eating at restaurants. If the price suddenly jumps, many people just skip it, so demand is elastic. On the other hand, we have inelastic demand. Here, demand barely changes even if prices rise. Gasoline is the classic example. If the price at the pump goes up 20%, most people still have to drive to work. Same with something like insulin. People need it, no matter the price. The basic formula for elasticity looks at the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. Don't worry about the math for now. Just remember it measures responsiveness. Why does this matter? Because elasticity directly affects how businesses set prices. If a product is inelastic, like gasoline, companies know people will still buy it, so they can raise prices without losing many customers. But if demand is elastic, like movie tickets, even a small price increase can drive customers away. So, the big takeaway is this. Elasticity tells us how sensitive people are to price changes, and that sensitivity shapes how businesses and governments make pricing and policy decisions. Let's take these concepts and bring them into the real world. Think about rising fuel prices. When global oil supply is disrupted, like during political tensions or natural disasters, the supply curve shifts left. Less supply, same demand, and suddenly prices at the pump rise sharply. We feel it immediately in our daily lives. Or take the launch of a new iPhone. Every September, Apple releases its latest model. At the start, supply is limited, but demand is sky high. People line up outside Apple stores, willing to pay the full price, sometimes even more in resale markets. That's scarcity driving price upward. Now, let's switch to Black Friday. Instead of scarcity, retailers slash prices to create a surge in demand. Discounts pull in massive crowds. People buy more than usual, and total sales explode. It's a classic case of demand increasing because price is lowered dramatically. And finally, look at a farmer's market. Seasonal fruits like strawberries or peaches flood the market during harvest season. Supply increases and prices naturally fall. But once the season ends, those same fruits become expensive again because supply drops. These everyday examples show us that supply and demand aren't just abstract graphs. They shape the prices and choices we face constantly. From fueling our cars, to buying the newest tech, to shopping sales, to picking fresh produce. Economics is happening all around us. All right, let's do a quick recap before we wrap up. Demand is simply what buyers want. Supply is what sellers are willing to offer. Equilibrium is the sweet spot where the two meet. Shifts happen when outside factors like income or technology change the balance. Minus. Surplus means too much supply, pushing prices down. Shortage means too little supply, pushing prices up. And elasticity tells us how sensitive buyers and sellers are to price changes. Now here's the key takeaway. Whenever you see prices rising or falling in the real world, it's not random. It's supply and demand in action. If this lesson made economics clearer for you, check the links in the description for free resources and more lessons. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Together, we'll make economics simple, practical, and even a little fun.